In this video, we will be joining up the separate elements of our robot. We'll be creating a hinge for the wings, a flexible bellows-like join to the base, and creating lenses for the camera part of our bot. So let's get started first with the wing. Now we want to join it with just a simple hinge here. So we're going to use the Add Primitive Cylinder tool. And instead of the orientation being on the surface, we just want to switch it to default. So now when we scale out, holding shift to constrain, we just get it along the global axes here. So just commit to that, rotate 90 degrees, move it roughly into place. Don't think we need it to be quite so big. So let's scale shift and Y and hit grab. And I think we want it attached like so. Just going to jump into edit mode here, select that polygon, grab and move it in ever so slightly. And then make sure we don't have any modifier or other modeling operation issues. We're just going to apply the scale with Control and A. Now the intersecting onto the wing part is hardly visible, but the body is going to be quite visible. So let's create a new Boolean operation to cut into the body so there's something for it to intersect into. Switching back to surface options here, let's just draw roughly along where the cylinder intersects and extrude it out. And hit G, Z or Z and Z and move it in. Now with that selected, we can shift, click the body of our robot and Control, Shift and B to create a difference Boolean. And so we can see how our operation has worked. We can move the bevel down below everything. Cool, I think that's looking good. Let's move our cutter into our hide collection. I think I'm happy with that. So let's join it to the wing element here by just shift selecting and hitting Control and J. And that will mirror magically over to the other side. But what won't mirror magically over is the Boolean modifier. So to address that, we can unhide all of our cutters, select the cutter we want, and just give it the same mirror operation as the wing. So to do that, we shift select the wing, hit Control C, copy selected modifiers, and just select mirror. This has moved it along the local axes, which is a bit of a problem at the moment. So let's just select it and hit Control A and apply rotation and scale. And that has mirrored everything over beautifully. And now we can hide our hide collection again. Let's tackle this join next. If we go into isolation mode with the / on the keyboard, we can use the geometry already created. So I'm just going to click the first polygon and Control click the last to select the shortest path, and then hit Shift and D, move it up, right click to drop it, hit P on the keyboard to separate by selection, and we have two separate objects now. So back out into object mode, we select the object we need to modify. And I'm just going to go in again to tab, select all and hit F on the keyboard. This makes sure we just work with a single polygon. And we have a little bit of cleanup to do if we jump into vertices. So let's just select these verts, hit X and dissolve vertices. Now back into edit mode. We just need to extrude the object up, but to do so, we need to see everything else. So let's just remove ourselves from isolation mode with the /, select our polygon, and just hit E to extrude it up. It's looking good. I'm just going to select all and scale on every axis but the Z axis. So Shift and Z or Z, and move it in very slightly. Cool. And now we want to create a kind of bellow effect here so that the bottom item can move with a little bit more freedom. So let's just do a multiple loop cut by hitting Control and R and just scroll up to, let's say 7 cuts. Okay, let's commit that. And then we need to Alt and click to loop select these 3. It's going to scale them about their normals. So Alt and S, and then move in ever so slightly. That's looking good. Another obvious omission here is the lens part, so let's jump into that. So I'm going to select the Add Primitive tool, move down to Cylinder, and click slightly off center here toward the right, as there is 2 other lenses on the left, and just click holding down Shift and Alt to scale from the center, and something like that looks good. Let's extrude. I'm going to expand our options here and just give it a little bit more resolution. And snapping to the front view, let's align it with the G key so we can just align it ever so slightly better. And then jump into edit mode where we can duplicate and move it out and scale it. Shift Y to scale it on every axis but the Y. And then move that into place. Maybe go a little bit bigger. Shift D to move down a duplicate. Let's commit that. Okay, we need to grab it and move it into the geometry. And now with our cutters selected, we select the camera body, Control Shift and B, and then difference. Again, moving our bevel below it. Looks good. And to create the lenses, we are going to take advantage of our already existing cutters by hitting Shift and D to duplicate and right click to drop. Now you can see we have version 1 of the cylinder here, and our old cylinder can move into our hide. And that is the one that actually cuts the geometry. And this is the one we're going to use as the basis of our lens mesh. As you can see, we can't see anything here. This is because we're on boundary mode. So if you were to, for example, go into our object properties, viewport display, and just move up here, and we can go from bounds to textured. That just rectifies that. You didn't really need to do that, but just in case you wanted to know. And if we jump into edit mode here, in poly mode, we can select the front face of this cylinder, hit Shift and S, cursor to selected. And now we can add a new item here. And the new item we want to create is a lens shape, which is sort of just a squished sphere, really. But we want to make it out of quads. And if you haven't got it already activated, you might need to go up to Preferences, Add-ons, and search for the word Extras. And just make sure that Add Mesh Extra Objects is checked. This will enable you to Shift A, go to Mesh, and then to Round Cube. And this, if we go up to our options here and select the operator Quad Sphere, means that we can create a sphere after we scale it down, made solely of quads, which is handy when it comes to subdividing, so we don't get weird pinching geometry artifacts. And we want to scale that along the Y, and then hit Control and A, apply rotation and scale. Now we're pretty much done with our guide objects here, so we can just hit X and delete them, and hit G and Y and move in our lens element, which is looking pretty good. And we need to do that for the other items, so I'm just going to snap to the front view here with Alt, hit Z on the keyboard, or Z, and go to wireframe. Now we can jump into edit mode and just duplicate this mesh to these 2 other areas. So I'm just going to duplicate and scale and duplicate and move down along the Z. Now if we jump back out into solid mode and back out into object mode, we can see that we have our lenses in place, but we're not totally done with that, because when we come to shading, as you can see, it benefits us having multiple lens elements to create a nice lens effect, but we will tackle that when we need to. Alright, with all our connecting elements done, it's time to move on to the next section, and that will be deviating ever so slightly away from our original guidance concept sketch here by adding some larger details to make the design a little bit more interesting.